I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
How you doing, Dapper Don?
Doing great.
One of the things that we're getting a lot of attention these days to our webpage, and our webpage is at lexingtonprosecutor.com, and it's we put criminal justice news and views and that, just those sorts of things on there, and sometimes we put kind of funny issues on it. And one that I saw, I think the guy was from Wisconsin, but he had his 10th, he was charged with his 10th DUI. And he said that the only reason that he registered at all was because he ate too much beer battered fish.
Yeah.
And when I first read that, I said, this really sounds fishy. I thought that was pretty good myself. What do you think?
Yeah, it's good stuff. Fishy. Beer battered fish. But I haven't heard that one. I've heard a lot of excuses.
Did you ever make DUI arrests?
Oh my gosh, yeah. My first year I did a lot of that.
Well, tell me about DUI arrests.
It's of course back then the alcohol level was, what was the point? Is it .08 now? Do you even know?
Yeah, 08 in Kentucky. Right?
You don't prosecute a lot of DUIs, what I'm saying.
Right.
But it was .10 back then, which was a little high. But the the amazing thing about DUIs, what I learned is the stereotypical DUI that you expect is not it at all. There are people that I would pull over for something like one headlight and truthfully not have any idea that they're drunk until about 5 minutes into our conversation. It starts to dawn on me that something's not right here. They're not staggering out of the car and falling over. Their car wasn't weaving all over the place. And oftentimes those are the people that once you determine that they're under the influence and take them and blow, they would be twice the limit sometimes, because those were more hardcore people that were unfortunately used to drinking while driving, and I don't know if holding their liquor better or what. And that's something that you always had to get across to juries, because if you put down on the field sobriety tests, that they passed a couple, which was the truth, you're going to put the truth down, then it would be like, well, how did they do that? It's like, look, some people like me, I'll have 3 beers, and there's no way in the world that I could pass, 2/3 of the test. But there are some folks that are a little more hardcore that, my dad could drink. He could drink a 5th of whiskey and still walk a tightrope, but be drunker than a dog. So that's probably the most interesting
thing. They call them functioning alcoholics. And there are people that are in the high 2s, 2.28, 0.3, that are really just have never been sober in years. They just constantly have these high rates.
And it's all well and good until someone pulls out in front of them. I mean, that's the reality. They may be able to drive about 5 miles below the speed limit and keep it between the lines, but they're still not going to have the reaction time. And often those are the ones that when they do go, cross the center line and hit people head on, and there you go. So they're very dangerous. Don't think just because you don't see them, weaving in and out of traffic. They're pros at it. They're being extra careful. They know how not to get pulled over. But what they can't keep from happening is they can't deal with the reaction time issue when somebody actually does pull out in front of them, or they pull out in front of someone else.
Well, it's an interesting proposition, and we're starting to run into the driving while drugged now, and that's kind of getting to be a. We know a lot about alcohol and the effect on people, but we don't know a lot about the effect of legalized marijuana on people, except that it affects them essentially the same way.
And what makes it difficult for a police officer is back in the old school days, not too long ago, probably a couple of years ago, whatever, if you pulled someone over and you smelled marijuana, that was an obvious indicator that they've been smoking pot. You get them out of the car, and based on smelling that marijuana, you look in their ashtray and you see a a marijuana roach there, you know, where they've been smoking one. That you're just going to lock them up. You know, you would try to determine if they're under the influence. I mean, they obviously are, but what level?
Well, they know that horizontal gaze nystagmus test. Why don't you explain that to our crime fighters
Well,
listening?
the one field sobriety test that is really not, it's not subjective, and it's not based on, you know, how coordinated a person is. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a horizontal gaze nystagmus test where the officer, you've seen this before, he'll hold his finger up or an ink pen, and he'll have the person follow the finger or the pen, and then he'll look how their eyes track. And there's certain points, if you see a jerk,
Yeah, it's jerk back and forth.
That tells the officer, is a very good indicator as to the level of intoxication. Okay, and honestly, that was the most effective. The slower the jerk, as I recall, or at the full point at 45 degrees, and you'd see a very uncontrolled slow jerk. That would indicate that their level of intoxication is over the limit in most cases. Now, there's a certain amount of people who have this naturally. Very, very, very few people. That's why you don't use that test in itself. Use a battery of tests. But that was one of the best indicators. But you know what? I don't remember if that applied to marijuana, to be honest with you. Does it?
You know, I don't either.
It was an alcohol test, as I recall. I just know with marijuana, my point is, you're right. How much have they smoked? But it was pretty simple because everyone who you caught smoking pot and driving was going to jail anyway. So you got them off the street because it was, marijuana was an offense you arrested for. Well, now they want you to write tickets for that. So you
And
could
let them drive off.
and let them drive off. So you could be writing a ticket. And when I say they, the legislature has ordered police officers in most cases to write tickets for those for drug possession like that. And so you write them a ticket, and you don't feel real good about it because it's like, were they smoking it while they were driving or what? And it's really hard to make that determination. And that's one of the problems with that. How do you get there with the drug drive?
Well, they're starting to have big time issues in both Washington and Colorado. Speaking of the legalization of marijuana, do you remember that Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, legalized marijuana for the city of Washington, D.C.? Well, oops, the federal government, the Congress says no. They kind of control Washington, D.C. They just are in charge. They let people elect representatives and that sort of thing. But
they're in charge of the purse strings, I guess.
That's right. And they say no, we're not. Federal law says that marijuana is not legal, and so they're going to at least say no, not in the nation's capital are we going to have people being able to just ignore the federal law that is right here. This is the seat of government, so that probably isn't going to work. It's
amazing. It really is amazing that of course, Washington's local characters have always been an issue. Remember Marion Barry, who recently died? It's the mayor of Washington caught smoking crack in a hotel room.
And an undercover sting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think he went to prison for
He
a little
did.
while. But didn't he get reelected? Either mayor or
A council
or
person,
something?
right,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like, wow, he became a cult hero to the people that live there, and the majority voted him back in office. And that is the nation's capital. So it's sort of a crazy place.
Yep. I read recently where there was a number of automobiles vandalized downtown in Lexington, Jefferson Street area, and West Main, and $300 worth of damage. And one of the victims said, "I hope there is some justice. I'd like to see whoever did it get punished." Well, good luck with that. That doesn't work anymore. $300 worth of damage becomes a misdemeanor. And if they even catch him, they give him a ticket.
Yeah, if an officer catches someone keying your car,
Mm-hmm.
you've got somebody that an old boyfriend's keying your car, and the officer catches him doing it. He's not supposed to arrest that person anymore. You're supposed to just write him issue him a citation,
A
and then he
ticket.
can turn on key it again and give him another ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what officers have been told to do, and
By the
by the
legislature.
legislature. And that's
very frustrating.
Oh, it's tearing them up. It really is.
One of the great examples was, we talked about this several weeks ago, but a police officer said his job is, he said, I'm stopping a lot of people who are driving on a suspended license. They can't drive because they don't have a valid driver's license. He says, I stop them. And he says, and of course I got to give them a ticket. Now, what do you do after that?
They've done it. The anti, I guess I don't know what you call the individuals that are pushed for us to be more lenient on the laws, but they make it sound like, well, operating on just a suspended license, should you really arrest somebody for that? The reason your license gets suspended is because you're convicted of DUI, you had a wreck and left the scene of an accident, you didn't yield to a school bus, you got a ticket and just said, screw it, I'm not going to pay it when you go to court. Those are the reasons that your license doesn't just get suspended until you have a process that they warn you that they're going to suspend your license. The problem is the people that pay the tickets. If you've received a speeding ticket and you were kind enough to pay it, thank you very much. We appreciate that. It's become a tax now. It's not become an enforcement issue. If you don't pay it, we're not going to do anything to you but suspend your license, and then if we catch you driving, we're just not going to do anything to you, just give you another ticket. It's crazy for the people that are willing to follow the law to see people that don't get no consequences.
I guess since you're tuned into the news all the time, support for gun rights is at the highest point in 20 years, in 2 decades. Prior to lately, the gun control people had the majority of the public after some of these school shootings and so forth. But now, the majority of Americans believe that the right to own guns is more important than that.
Don't you think that's a response to people's not feeling secure with the way that the justice system operates? I mean, do you think
I don't
that's-
have any question about that. It's it's very interesting because if you read the information, what's driving this change, and it's really interesting. If you read this article, the highest, that's the 52%, highest approval rating in 2 decades, and according to the Pew Foundation, it's being driven in part by changing attitudes among Black Americans who are increasingly likely to view guns as good for public safety. They found 54% of blacks now say firearms protect people from being victims of crime. So people are starting to get scared, just like they did in the 80s after 10 or 15 years of this soft on crime, criminal friendly laws. People are starting to get scared. And what you're seeing on TV these days is part of the deal. So,
Well, you can check out more at LexingtonProsecutor.com. You've got some articles and views on gun rights, and you can also check out this dude's story, this fishy tale of the battered fish that's caused him to get the DUI.
beer battered fish.
Beer battered fish. Don't you hate it when that happens? And we'll see you next week on In Touch.